Nice. We're a good-looking group.
We are live. So tonight is the Story Geeks movie night. Boom. Yeah.
Where's our popcorn?
I almost thought about having popcorn, and I'm like, dude,
Nobody wants to listen to us chew.
Yeah, no one wants to hear us chew popcorn. So I know a bunch of people, this is very late for them. It's very late for me. I might fall asleep during the recording of this show.
I might too.
But we are going to do our movie night. So this idea came from rewarding our Patreon supporters because our Patreon supporters have supported us to the tune of $100 a month. Technically, it's at $99 because one guy's credit card declined. But we still respect the Patreons and the Patreon supporters and the fact that they did that. So this is our movie night. We are going to do live commentary. We are going to play Raiders of the Lost Ark. We will let you know when we're going to play it. We're playing it off Netflix. So if you're on Netflix and we say go and we hit go and you hit go at the same time, we should be at the same place in the movie. You will not hear the movie playing through our audio, nor will you see the movie playing because we don't want to run into any copyright issues. So
we need a lot more than $100 a month for that.
Yeah, exactly. We need a relationship with Kathleen Kennedy. Yeah. You guys can just send us her number. That'd be perfect. So we'll be watching on a really small laptop, but we'll still be having a good time, and we are going to discuss it throughout. So we will be. Mary Baldwin, I'm sorry. We will be talking over the movie.
Yes.
That's what a commentary does.
Right.
Feel free to stop us and watch the movie.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, shut up
That
our
is
commentary.
also an option.
That's right.
Just watching.
Just watch the movie.
And
It's
might
that
I also
good.
recommend listening to this commentary while watching some other movie.
Sure.
And just see how it goes.
Right.
Just see how it lines up.
It's
Watch
like
Solo.
Yeah.
Dark Side of the Moon.
Yes, and Mr. Bob.
Yes.
It lines up perfectly.
Oh my gosh.
That would be crazy, actually, if there was a movie that it lined up perfectly for. I'm really happy for our patrons, though, because our patrons chose this movie. We had them vote on what movie we would watch, and this is my favorite movie of all time. So,
and we've never touched it before.
we've never talked about it. So
Which
now,
is insane.
Yeah, now we know who the favorite host is.
that's right. I am the favorite host. Clearly, I'm sorry to you guys.
No Edgar Wright in there. All
Yeah.
right.
I mean, you guys can bring me some grapes whenever you feel like it. No, I'm teasing. I'll
Or
bring you
dates.
guys grapes. Dates.
Bad date.
Bad date. Yeah, exactly. That's a sad part of this movie. Oh, my high just fell way down.
Aw.
Poor
So
monkey.
are you guys ready to just jump into
Yeah.
it?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Sandra, if you can hit the play button, we're gonna start the movie right now. So the movie has started, and
And it is a Paramount picture.
Paramount Picture, and it
Perfect
fades
mountain.
into the background.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then we get the credits start here. So I'm gonna kick us off with my first prompt on here, and that is this the best movie opening of all time? And because it is, why is it the best movie opening of all time?
I'm going to give that a solid maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I feel like what we have to start talking about to compare to this is A New Hope and
Oh,
things like
yeah.
that, where it's just you're thrown into this world and you're on the edge of your seat the entire time.
Yeah.
So I just feel like A New Hope may have shown us something that we had never seen before.
Yeah.
Whereas this shows some amazing things that we haven't seen before, but it's on Earth. It's in a context that we're a little
Yeah.
more familiar with. But it's up there.
It is.
I love how mysterious it is, right?
Mhm.
Like we're walking, he's walking through the jungle, and you're like, well, where are they going? Like there's so many questions just from seeing them walk around,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
Who is he? Why haven't we seen
Right.
his face?
Yeah.
Exactly. What are you gonna say, Sandra?
Well, I love that. I recently rewatched this movie, and it's like you can just stop it right after this conflict. There are so many conflicts, and the stakes keep getting raised throughout the movie, but it's just like this whole story within a story within a story, and it just keeps happening over and over again.
Yeah.
So this whole opening scene, you have like a beginning, middle, and end.
Totally.
You have this conflict in his response to it, and the effects of that. And I thought, man, like that's so much to happen in just the beginning, first few minutes of a movie.
I know.
Yeah.
Especially as you bring up like beginning, middle, end.
Yep.
I mean, that's like really well done throughout this film. There's always a beginning, middle, end. There's lots of scenes that you It's the writing technique that you would call in media res. You start in the middle of things. I guess it's Latin for in the middle of things, I think. But it's just throwing people into a scenario. And that's what we've done here. Like, we've thrown us into this scenario of, why are they doing this? Why are there poison darts in the tree? Why are these guys so shady? Right? Like, so it's just a really cool beat. Now, what are some other movies that you guys would compare? Like, you threw out New Hope.
Yeah.
Fantastic opening there.
Yeah.
What are some other openings that you guys would put up there on the best openings of all time?
The Dark Knight.
Oh, Dark Knight's a good opening. Yeah.
What is it? What doesn't kill you makes you strange.
That's right.
Oh man, I don't even know. I mean, I tend to obviously gravitate to Edgar Wright.
Oh, yeah, of course,
probably Baby Driver and that whole scene.
Whole opening scene.
Yeah, the whole opening scene with the music and the chase.
That's
and
really good one.
I feel like that's a one that jumps out at me as being a pretty recent, excellent opening.
That's a great point. We just get to see Indy here use his whip to defend himself against the gun, because they're going somewhere with this map, and this dude runs off into the jungle. Now, I don't have this as a question, but pretty unique to see a dude with his main weapon being a whip. Right? Like, has that ever been done before? I can't think of it ever. That's pretty cool.
You have to have the space to, use the whip and not hit anything else. So he can't be around trees, can't be like in a confined space.
That's a really good point.
And it cracks me up that it's a multi-purpose tool for him, because it does the defense and the offense, but then he can swing on it. So it's just like this perfect extension of him. And so while you're asking about this being maybe the best intro, I'm also curious, is there a more recognizable character silhouette?
Oh, wow.
I mean,
Maybe
again, I have to go with The Dark Knight. I mean, come on. Batman?
I said Nosferatu.
Oh, yeah.
That's not bad. As you're entering into this cave here, we have a whole setup for this mystery. Like, what is he doing here? Why is he even doing this? He has a map. Like, so as you talk about, Sandra, the beginning, middle, end, like, this is still like a fantastic beginning where we have no clue what's going on. We know that there's danger in here. Like, that's obvious, right? Like, we know that there's tension. Oh, this is a great scene too.
There's so many comedic gags in this.
Tarantulas.
So, gross.
No.
He has a couple
And
spiders.
those are real.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
How can it get any worse?
And this guy's freaking out because he's got one. Oh, wait, buddy. You got 15.
Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh.
I distinctly remember watching this as a kid and feeling like I'd missed something, though.
Really?
Like, yeah, because I was really young, and I remember thinking, oh, there must be another movie before this, because I feel like I'm supposed to know who these guys are.
Oh, yeah.
And then, ironically, there kind of is another movie before it, but it was released after it.
Right.
This whole
There were a
scene,
bunch of movies before this.
Yeah.
But
this-
after.
This whole scene reminds me of, well, I should say, Goonies borrowed from this. Perhaps.
yeah.
Totally.
I mean, this became such an iconic film, like basically right off the bat. And a lot of people consider the screenplay for this film to be a perfect screenplay.
It was nominated, wasn't it?
I don't know. I should know that, but I don't
think
know.
it was, and
As an original?
I think it was the only screenplay, of the Raiders franchise that was nominated.
Oh, yeah, of Indiana Jones. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
Actually, yeah, man, that makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
actually.
Oh, going back to the spiders, I was watching some of the making of stuff. Apparently, they put a bunch of male spiders on him, and they didn't move.
Yeah.
And then, like, Steven Spielberg was like, this looks stupid. They look fake.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we need to put the female spider on him, and then they'll all fight each other.
Oh.
And so they did that. And so, like, the actor was, like, horrified. And Spielberg's like, great, keep that energy.
That's awesome.
He's like, stellar
Dude.
acting. Yeah, that was acting.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so I looked up the Oscar stuff.
Yeah.
And this was basically like the Marvel movie of its day. Because
Really?
check it out. It was nominated for Best Picture,
Okay.
Best Director,
Okay.
Best Cinematography,
Okay.
Best Music Original Score. But it didn't win any of those. The ones that it won are Best Art Direction,
Nice.
Best Sound, Best Film Editing, and
Cool.
Best Visual Effects.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
That's the same thing that happens to blockbusters
Same
nowadays.
thing.
Like they just
Every
win all the
time.
technical
Nothing's
awards.
Every time.
changed. So here, it just makes me think of the ride. Like they did such a great job at making the Indiana Jones ride like the movies.
Yeah.
And you're in there getting chased and there's darts flying around.
And then even the queue is as
Oh,
right.
immersive as you
Brilliant.
want it
Yep.
to be, because there are places where you're not supposed to step, and it's really fun to not step there.
I totally stepped there.
we all went as a Story Geeks hosting team.
Mhm.
We went to Galaxy's Edge. In fact, I posted some pictures on social media. So if you don't follow us on social media, go look for the Story Geeks, and you can see a picture of the hosts. But
And it was made clear to us that that's the only place you can see all four of us in the same place
I know
at the same time.
because we never do that.
Except apparently now for this.
Yeah.
But even after riding Smuggler's Run, I still think that the Indiana Jones ride is the best ride I've ever been on in the history of theme park attractions.
Wow.
Really?
Oh, dude, I love it so much.
From the queue onward. And
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because the queue is an extension of the ride.
Yes.
You're in the mood to go on the adventure by the time you get there.
I love how all the caution of the first part of this scene is thrown out the window as soon as everything starts to go to shit. Oh, let's get out of here.
Okay. You know what I want to see someday?
What's that?
There's all these rocks falling. There's this door lowering. There's darts flying out of the wall. I want to see a movie that's just about the guys that rig all that stuff up.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
That spend like months loading darts and
An
rigging
entire
up
movie
rocks.
about those guys?
Yes. Like,
And then they come
It's-
check on it like a month later. Huh? No
I
one's
know.
tried breaking in, so nothing
Yeah.
went off.
like everything in here is so cool, but it's
Oh,
so
man.
outlandish. It's like, well, how did that actually get done?
There's
Is-
something that they
is-
do in Indiana Jones that they do it in other films or other shows and TV shows. I was just watching Stranger Things, the latest season, and they did that in there too. And it's that every time you think that it couldn't get any worse, it gets a little worse.
Right.
Every time.
And then this is one of the most impressive like action set pieces in movie history.
Yeah.
And it's so simple,
Mhm.
but it's horrifying because if he doesn't run ahead of it, he's trapped in here forever.
Yes.
So he has to beat it. Oh, he trips. Like,
right, exactly. Yeah, the production design is just out of this world.
If this was made today, they would have just CGI'd that giant boulder, and
Right.
it wouldn't
And
feel
he wouldn't
Yeah.
have
menacing at all.
tripped because
It
there's
would've-
no
yeah,
real
exactly.
threat.
and I'll come back to that when we're digging in the desert because that set is huge.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
So here we have he just got out of one situation and that is done.
Yeah,
But
Right,
take
now
a deep breath.
again,
Nope.
nope,
Yeah.
we're not done.
We're
But wait,
not
there's
done at
more.
all. Yeah. So
And-
I have go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and it sets up the relationship of rivalry between them for the
Right.
movie. So this isn't a standalone scene, which it would have been amazing for, in the first place. But this guy gets what he wants, and he keeps getting what he wants for the whole movie. But
There are so many things that we can address that I just we'll just keep addressing throughout this. But one of the ones that I'm curious about, and I'm wondering if this has a little bit to do with the poor reception of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Okay. But do you think Indiana Jones can be relevant in the age of information? Like, in other words, this was back in the early 80s, right? Like, we could believe that there was something like this out there in the
Mhm.
early 80s. This movie was made the year I was born, or it came out, I should say, the year I was born. So I remember being a kid and not knowing stuff. Like you couldn't just go online and be like, oh, I'm going to look at YouTube to see South America. And you're like, oh, this is nothing like South America, right? So I'm just wondering if the age of information has sort of ruined Indiana Jones for us because there is no mystery. There's a vlogger right now on the Nile, probably, right? So does that ruin it for us?
I feel like you have to go into films, especially of this nature, willing to have your disbelief suspended.
Yeah.
And yes, we can have access to it. That's why, sometimes I get distracted. I don't want to say struggle, but I get distracted with biopics because I know it's based on a real person, and so I'll want to look at did that
Yeah.
really happen? And I
Right.
can access it. And then sometimes I go too far in the Wikipedia page or whatever. Like, no, I know what's happening next.
Yeah.
But in films like this, you really, I would hope you would go in willingly, suspending your disbelief and saying, I'm going to trust that it's wherever they're calling it.
Right.
I think more when we talk about being relevant today, the issue is then, is he is Indiana Jones stealing these artifacts from people groups, and that belongs to them. It means something to them. It's not just a treasure.
Is he a grave robber? Kind
Right,
of like,
right.
Yeah.
So I think in that regard, people would say, it's problematic, perhaps. But
imperialist bastard.
Right, but this is today they would. They'd cancel Indiana Jones. No.
They cancel him. He is canceled, son. And then we learn that he's super afraid of snakes, even though he just... By the way, there was a previous scene in here that I know I asked the previous question, so I kind of messed it up. But there's a scene in there where it shows him running, and he's like 10 feet in front of these dudes. And then they show him running again, and he's like, 50 yards. You're like, he must be real fast. I don't know how that worked out. And then we see completely different Indiana Jones here as we see him at the teaching.
And struggling to spell.
And, yeah, exactly.
Neil,
now, what do you guys think of Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones? Is it possible to have anyone else as Indiana Jones?
Nope. Oh, I was reading who was in the running.
Oh, yeah.
And how he wasn't.
Tom Selleck. Tom Selleck was in the running.
Oh, my goodness.
He would have had a cool mustache, I guess.
Oh, no. Mustaches were super in. Well, they're in again, but they were super in back then. But no, he's just... Harrison Ford is so good at being this kind of scoundrel where you're like,
perfect,
he's kind of doing good, I guess, but also kind of sketchy.
Yeah, exactly.
I think definitely not. Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. Yeah. Do not bother to try and recast him.
Yeah.
Just make Uncharted movies.
He said that recently.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Just cast Nathan Drake and we're good.
Yeah.
We don't need a different Indiana Jones.
That is very impressive to write backward on your eyelids.
I'm assuming she had a friend help her.
I know. That's
my only guess.
Because that was pencil. That was not like the liquid liner.
No.
Can you imagine how disturbing that would be?
Oh.
Wait, what do you say to your friend?
Paint on my eyelids.
Will you write on my eyelids so I can hit on my teacher?
And also, I'm done being your roommate now.
Yeah, exactly. Then there's some dude leaves an apple.
Yeah, that is like, so weird.
And Marcus steals it.
Yeah, Marcus was like, "All right, cool."
And I feel like, Steven Spielberg was done talking to that extra. Like, I need you to give me motivation for giving him that apple.
Yeah, exactly. That dude has never wanted to not leave an apple so badly. He's like, just throw the apple on the thing and just leave. Yeah. So for anybody that's joining us midstream, we are now at the place where Marcus is talking to Indy inside the classroom, basically. And it is an old school classroom.
Yeah,
that is a heck of a classroom. It's super cool looking.
It's a great classroom.
They look like little pews.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to say. The students can learn and then pray for their final in the same place.
And then we're setting up here in this scene, we're setting up the central conflict of what. So we've already set up the villain because we already have Belloc. But we're setting up the central conflict here. And by the way, they call him the professor of archaeology, expert on the occult. Does anybody know why they call him an expert on the occult? Trivia.
Why?
Do you? I think you do.
I do.
No, what if he's just curious? He's
so
like, why?
They call him that because we just talked about Temple of Doom being a prequel. And that was technically the occult, like the thuggy cult was like a form of the occult. Right? So now he's an expert because he's dealt with that situation.
If you've witnessed a dude put his hand through another dude's chest and pull out his heart,
you're an expert.
You're an expert on the occult.
Yeah. What if the guy reached into the guy's chest and pulled out the apple that the guy gave him?
And then just awkwardly put it down?
Exactly. Here, take this. I love the casting of these CIA agents or FBI agents. It's perfect. It's Porkins on the left from...
Is that the same actor?
I believe it is.
That's
I believe it is.
Awesome.
If not, that's a really mean name.
Well, so you guys know what happens to Porkins in A New Hope.
Yeah.
Yes,
he
crashes.
Blown up.
Crashes and burns. And they're like, "Hey, dude, can you come back? But actually, you'll be a loser FBI agent."
Yeah, another character that crashes and burns just differently.
Exactly. He's being typecast. And we're learning about the fact that they're trying to find the Ark of the Covenant, and then we get some background into the Ark of the Covenant here. So I have another question. I have all these prompts for you guys, but you guys can jump in whenever you want to and just say whatever. He's going to start describing the Ark of the Covenant, and they call it the Lost Ark, Ark of the Covenant, the chest the Hebrews use, carry around the 10 Commandments. And then these guys like don't believe him, right? As they describe this, do you feel like this is okay? So I have several questions for you. It's kind of not fair because we all come from a similar spiritual perspective in this room. But the Ark of the Covenant shows up inside the Bible as being an item of power, and they describe it here about where it is and what's happened to it. But as they describe this and saying it has the power of God in it, and there's even a picture of it where there's like these rays of light like coming out of the ark, and I believe he calls it the power of God in a minute. That's the power of God coming out of the ark. How accurate do you think that the depiction at this point in the film? Because we're going to see more of the ark later, but at this point in the film, does it work for you? Does it feel accurate? Does it work for the movie and not for your perception of history? Or how do you feel about it?
I feel like this is the best MacGuffin ever.
Really?
Yeah. So I feel like it's really fun when you can take something that comes from tradition and history and lore and put your own twist on it, just that serves the story.
Yeah.
So if you're asking me, is this how I believe the historical Ark of the Covenant would interact in reality, I'd say no. But as a prop piece and as a plot device, I love it. There are some really weird stories in the Old Testament that revolve around the Ark of the Covenant, like that certain people were supposed to carry it, and that if someone else touched it, they dropped dead.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and so
they carry it with the acacia wood poles, right?
Oven mitts.
And then there
Ancient
is an element of like that God would bless the people, you know, carrying it into battle, or like that the nation that stole it would like be cursed.
That's
like
right.
so there's something about, because I don't believe that, like, thinking, you know, from my spiritual background and what I understand about that and everything, I don't think there's anything special about that box. I think God chose that it was special and chose to treat it differently, but the box itself isn't special.
Yeah.
It's like a symbol that, you know, God used as an example of his power and stuff. So anyways, so it feels like in this movie, like he treats it more like if he could get in control of it, and that's how the Nazis also treated it. If they can get in control of it, they'll win.
Right.
And so it's interesting that even in this movie, it's like there's a certain will that's at play, whether that is the will of God or the will of the box.
Right.
But yeah, so I think it's a great plot device. I don't think it's like accurate how I would.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because Hitler obviously wants it for power and for destruction.
It's like an infinity stone.
Right. And so I think if you're thinking about something that has the power of God in it, could it be willed for nefarious deeds? Well, no, we would think no. So, but as a plot device, as you're talking about, I think it is interesting to think now you've got this thing that people are not sure about. It's this mystic thing.
Yeah.
And it's powerful. So sure, it could, you know, blast this ray that will destroy mountains or just give you power. So it makes sense from that perspective. But not mine.
Daryl?
Yeah, that all sounds good.
I think I would not disagree with any of that. I don't think it fits my because I would agree. Like, it doesn't feel like that is the depiction of the ark from the Bible, because you said it, that's an item. That's an item of power that can be wielded, whereas it was God that was the power, right? But I think you're 100% correct. I love it when filmmakers will take a chance on including religious iconography from whatever religion you choose to put it in, and then showcasing it in a scenario that shows up on film. Because it just questions us, because it causes us to stop for a second and go, wait a minute, what do I actually think about that?
Yeah.
And the thing that's interesting about the way that Spielberg deals with a lot of religious iconography in his films is that he never calls them into question as being stupid or ridiculous. He might not just
says talking about superstitious.
Yeah. Well, and this is kind of key to the whole film is
Right.
that Indiana Jones believes it believes that it's stupid, and yet his whole reckoning is an understanding that there is supernatural in the world. That wasn't just the Sankara stones. That wasn't just a one-off thing that happened to me that was kind of occultish that I didn't understand. Like the paranormal, supernatural is a real thing, and I have to deal with it.
Yeah. And you see Han Solo go through that as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Spielberg and Lucas do that really
There's
well.
no aliens.
There's never.
Stupid.
Why
There
would that
never
even
be aliens?
Why would that even come up in the movie?
I don't know why I brought it up. I'm sorry.
And then it's just, hey, here's Harrison Ford looking handsome getting on a plane.
I know.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. And then this is an iconic
I know.
travel scene where
Travel
you see
by map. Yeah.
I love those.
it.
It reminds me of all the cartoons growing up where that's how you show they
Yeah.
traveled. They
That's right,
just
that's right.
traveled through these little dots.
Yep.
It's perfect.
Red lines all across
Red
the
lines.
world.
That's right. By the way, I don't know why a modern airline does not have that style, like, flight progress map. They should totally do that. That'd be way cool. So they're traveling to Nepal because they essentially have to. Abner, who knew a bunch about where the Ark might be located and how to find it, is missing, and so Indy is going to meet somebody in Nepal to see if he can figure it out. And now we're introduced to Marion in a fantastic introduction.
That's what I was going to say. We're talking about stories within stories. This is a wonderful story.
Yeah.
That's very short, but very effective. And we don't know who we're being introduced to. We may have been being introduced to that guy.
It's true, maybe. She plays this scene really, really well, too.
I have such strange memories of this from watching it as a kid. Like, they're doing shots here, and I didn't know what that was when I was a kid. I'm like, why are they having such a hard time drinking their drinks?
She stayed up way too late. She was very tired.
This is so weird.
That apple juice is intense. So I do have to bring this up because this scene kind of showcases Marion as a badass. But there can be easily an argument made in Indiana Jones that their treatment of female characters is troubling.
Well, for her too, it just happens later in the film.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
This is her tough scene. But
This is
it's
her
kind of
tough
the only
scene.
one.
Exactly. She starts to lack agency from here on out.
He just smiles all the way down.
That's right. So what do you guys think about that? Do you think that talk to me about the issue of how they treat women in the Indiana Jones series?
Why are you guys looking at me? I think it's coming up in a later scene. Well, I know it's coming up in a later scene. The one that I think is more problematic when she talks about having been a child.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, you knew what you were doing. And I'm like, no. What are you?
So here we go.
I think that's probably because she looks young, but you don't know how long ago they met and how young she was.
And she said something about 10 years ago.
Right.
Yes. And you're like, how old is she? Wait a second.
Yep.
I've heard on some podcasts that if you listen to the discussion that the producers were having before making the film, there was they threw out the idea. I think it was go look it up yourself because I don't want to throw shade on people that I don't have full context on. But what I heard was that in those tapes that you can listen to George Lucas kind of say what if Indiana Jones is 28 and Marion is 14? And you're like,
and
bad call,
Marion's
bro.
a felony.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well,
that guy, he's such a scoundrel.
Exactly.
No.
I wonder because this was my issue with Call Me by Your Name because the younger character was, I believe, 16.
Okay.
But maybe 17. But the age of consent in, I think, Italy where they were, he was of age.
Yeah.
And it was just such a weird thing to look up. Like, what is the age of consent in
Yeah.
this country? And I thought, I
Definitely
swear,
something you're gonna
I'm
get
asking
flagged
for a
looking at.
friend.
Yeah.
There's some government computer that's going to mark that one.
I know. So I don't know, like, what the
How
age
to
of
shoot
consent
the
is
president.
for Marion. Yeah,
Yeah.
some research.
Yeah. It's
Um,
a reference to Air Force One.
Yes. So I don't know what the age of consent. I mean, if there's any, I'm sure there's a country where 14 would be considered the age of consent.
Yeah.
So that's where,
What do
you
you
know,
do with
from
that?
a US perspective, that's wrong. And from, some would say, just a human perspective, it's
Right.
wrong.
Yeah, and it's you watch a show like Game of Thrones or read the books even, and that's like rampant in those things, right? Like
Wow.
there's all kinds of age issues, right?
Mhm.
The lead characters, it's not like George Lucas suggested it. It's like, no, this lead character is 12. Like, and you're like, okay.
Ugh.
But the problem is that now this is not true of Indiana Jones, but of Game of Thrones, like he was writing as if. By the way, I love this scene. Just to comment, we just saw Indiana Jones is leaving, and he opens the door, and there's a lattice work in the door,
Mhm.
and the light shines right onto his eye through the lattice work, not onto any other part of his face, but his eye. And that is Steven Spielberg
Mhm.
genius, right?
Mhm.
Like to be able to capture that is perfect. But back to Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin was basing Game of Thrones off medieval culture at the time. And so it is super disturbing, and he's trying to call attention to the fact that it is disturbing. But I will tell you, it is challenging to get through because of that. The show's way easier because you're like, oh, well, these actors are clearly, in their 20s.
Mhm.
But in the book, there's no break of that. It's like, you say they're 12, they're 12. So it's odd that there was so much of that back in the day. I don't know if it's because people lived to shorter lengths of time or something, but it's
Back
very,
in the
very
day,
disturbing.
meaning Indies time?
No.
Medieval.
The medieval
Meaning
times.
medieval time.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
And then we're introduced to this son of a bitch. I don't know this guy's
Is that
name.
his real name?
Yeah, that's how he's described in the credits. He's the henchman. What,
He
do you know what his
reminds
name is?
He reminds me of the bad guy from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
He kind of is like that guy.
Totally.
Yeah.
Christopher Lloyd's character.
Yeah.
Yes. Ooh, hey, bonus points because I said nefarious earlier in the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. They
There
just
you
said it
go.
now. And this is still showcasing Marion as a pretty strong character because she's standing up to a bunch of nefarious dudes.
Yeah.
So it goes downhill from here.
His
I love
name
how
is
his face
Toht,
is lit.
or Tot.
Oh.
Toht.
So just to pick up on the female thing, I think it's definitely an issue.
Mhm.
Like if you look through each one, it's even worse than Temple of Doom, honestly. And by the way, Kate Capshaw is Steven Spielberg's wife in real life.
Oh, interesting.
Because of Temple of Doom.
Because of Temple of Doom. But I think it's pretty challenging to watch that film and feel she's supposed to be a joke.
Yeah.
Like
She's incredibly annoying.
And
right. Yeah.
I feel like he's a less classy James Bond. And so it's a
Yes.
really similar thing where he's
Yes.
he is a womanizer. I get
Right.
I think he does care about them, but he also uses them.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
Actually, so I was listening to a podcast, Script Notes podcast, and they did a podcast about Raiders. They're a script writing. By the way, those dudes are not Nepalese, so we've got those issues. Got those issues going back to 1981.
Do they have prosthetics or something?
It looks like it, yeah. So
Oh, yeah.
it's
Oh, goodness.
it is troubling. Go back to Hollywood just 30 years ago, and you're like, representation is a giant issue.
Yeah.
Oh, it's there. It's just not nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's there. It's just not nice.
Yeah.
But one of the things we were talking about in this Script Notes podcast was partially Raiders is about Indiana Jones learning to value people over things.
Mm.
And that's a pretty interesting insight. So I believe it's not only valuing people over things, but also realizing that there are spiritual factors at work and constantly being reminded of that. And those two things are really cool for a character who doesn't perceive to develop all that much.
I love that.
She takes a drink of the whiskey. Yeah, it's awesome. And this is a fantastic fight too.
Yeah.
This movie was rated PG, right?
Only because
was-
they didn't
wasn't
have
it PG-13?
Was
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
It
Was it Temple of Doom that led
Yes.
to the
No.
creation of PG-13?
No.
I thought it was.
Last Crusade.
Was it? Well, Last Crusade was PG-13.
Yeah.
But I think that the
Temple of Doom being PG and having so much in it is what led to the creation
Prompted it.
of the PG-13
Right.
rating.
Oh, okay.
I just watched just to pick up on that. I watched Dick Tracy last night.
Oh,
How that movie is PG, I have no clue,
Oh,
dude.
wow.
I'm like, we're watching it, and Jessica's like, "This is PG-13 for sure." I'm like,
It
I'm
didn't
pretty
exist.
sure it's
Yeah.
PG. No, it did because it was 1990.
Oh,
I'm like, I'm pretty sure
wow.
this is PG. She goes, "There's no way," because we just watched Madonna walk through the film.
Yeah.
Where you're like, she's not wearing much clothing.
Yeah.
There's no way this is PG. But no, it is PG. So, word of warning to parents: if you're going to show Dick Tracy to your kids. There's a little iconic piece of the scene here where the guy thinks he's capturing the medallion, and it turns out to burn his hand, and so that's going to come back, obviously. To
Yeah.
mean something.
which you get a little
And-
homage to in
and really
Avengers
well.
Infinity War.
Oh, that's right. I didn't even
Yep.
think about that. What were you going to say, Justin?
Oh, just every element of this plays a part. So that he burned his hand helps them, but doesn't help them all the way. So there's just so many layers to this story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The set pieces on this. Now, what I love about this, what I love about practical effects before we had CG,
Mhm.
is that this is probably on a soundstage somewhere, but they've got giant wind
Right.
things.
Oh,
They've
right.
got
Oh yeah,
everything's
rain
on fire.
machines.
Yeah, just like so cool.
I read that the Well of Souls
Yeah.
was shot on the same set that was used for the Overlook in The
Really?
Shining.
Ah.
And I was like, yes! I just got all excited. That's so
Instantly the movie
cool.
improved in your
Yep.
mind. Yeah. Flying through Baghdad.
All those connecting
Cairo.
flights, they get you every time, right?
How
That's
come we
right.
don't have planes that go that fast nowadays?
Yeah, seriously.
Man,
What were they doing back in the day?
15-second flight to Cairo? That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then we got introduction of Sala,
Mhm.
Yeah.
John Rhys Davies.
That is a definite look right there, Harrison Ford.
That's right. Why button the top three buttons?
know.
What's the
Yes.
point of that? Then we're introduced to the little monkey, which is awesome. He's spilling drinks.
Is that the
Is
Cause
there
of
ever a
trouble.
point in any of these films when Harrison Ford is not sweating?
No.
Because I feel like there's not.
Somebody spritz Harrison.
He's getting
Every
too
5
dry.
minutes. Yeah. We talked about the issues with women. Talked about definitely some representation problems because they're just putting white people in makeup. What do you guys think as they talk about digging in Cairo? Now that they're in Cairo, talking about digging in Cairo, trying to find the Well of Souls. What do you guys think about Belloc as a villain? We haven't seen much of him yet in the film, so
Yeah.
I'm kind of asking you based on knowledge of the entire film.
I think he's a really good foil to Indiana Jones
Mm.
because I feel like he's just a mirror. There are so few things that separate him from Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
You know, they end up on the same quest doing the same things.
Yeah.
So slightly different intentions. I want to put this in a museum. I want to have it or sell it or whatever.
Right.
But and then just maybe he doesn't sell out. Like that's almost it. And then there's a little bit more wisdom that comes from somewhere. I still don't totally get that bit
Yeah.
where Indiana Jones is like, we can't look at it. You know, where does he
Where does he have that
get
instinct?
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's a respect for the Ark of the Covenant that Belloc is showing at the end when he gets into the full religious iconography
right.
garb.
Yeah, he's wearing the whole priest garb.
Yeah. And so he's done his research. He knows what he should be doing or, you know, what he thinks he should be doing. So yeah, they're very similar.
Yeah.
And so I wish they would have spent a little bit more time on that. I mean, there are a couple lines about it, but yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I feel like there's no villain from any of these movies that really stands out to me. Like, I think Indiana Jones is such a charismatic character
Yeah.
that they just haven't made a villain that stands up against him as being nearly as interesting as he is.
I thought they were gonna do it with Kate Blanchett. Not that that
Yeah.
movie exists, but if it did exist, I thought they would be able to pull it off.
Yeah. It looked like she was going to be an awesome villain, and then they Ragnaroked it, and it just
Yeah, exactly.
didn't happen.
Let's choose one of the best actresses of all time, and let's not give her enough to do. So we're getting the feel now because we're seeing some tall white dudes. We're getting the feel that something more is going on.
Yeah, and he
in
just
Cairo.
gave a Heil Hitler, and they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah."
Yeah, exactly. They weren't like, "What are you doing, bro?" That's a bad sign. If somebody gives a Hail Hitler and the guy does not respond to it very, very aggressively, it's a sign you need to leave that room.
Just testing the temperature of the room.
Yeah.
That's right. I am out if they start throwing that up.
Doesn't the monkey do it at some point?
Yes.
Yeah,
Racist
Racist monkey.
Jeez.
the monkey.
I've had it up to here with these
Yeah.
racist monkeys.
Give him a date.
Oh.
Give that racist monkey.
I feel like that's a line that Samuel L. Jackson should deliver in a movie. I've had it up to here with these racist monkeys.
remake when they
Yeah.
remake Raiders. I think that's probably. And then we got a whole fight scene, and I have to bring up at this point in the movie how amazing the soundtrack of this film is.
Oh my gosh. So I don't want to take us far from the soundtrack,
Yeah,
but just having George Lucas, Harrison Ford, Steven Spielberg, John Williams, it's one of those things that I feel like will happen once, you
Yeah.
know, and this is it.
Yeah.
So
totally.
it's a good gag, like with the fruit coming off the sword in the back. That's a good thing.
I feel like what we see in Ray is kind of in response to what we see here. So Marion, he keeps grabbing her hand, and she's like, for Ray, she's like, "Stop holding my hand."
Yeah.
But we see that in this film and in others where the female lead, her hand keeps getting grabbed.
That dude is creepy looking, dude.
She's hitting
Got the
people with,
knife.
why does she not have a weapon? She's just hitting people with pots and pans.
Yeah. Oh well.
And Rapunzel took that move.
Oh yeah, it's true.
These movies also have the most epic punching sound effects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if punching actually sounded like that in real life,
You'd be doing it for fun.
like, where did they get that from?
I get in fights all the time.
It's insane.
It sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's right. I will say that one of the things I love about what Steven Spielberg is able to do with action sequences, and I think it's kind of unique in many regards to Steven Spielberg, is that he can make the action very tense, very that there are stakes here, right? Like, we are actually worried about Marion,
Right.
but he's throwing in all of these things that break up the tension to the point where we laugh.
Mhm.
Right.
And but that doesn't take the tension away. It just relieves our emotional state.
Mhm.
And here's a very iconic scene.
Oh, yeah.
Indiana Jones shoots the dude.
So, in some of the special features that I was watching,
Yeah.
I saw deleted scenes, and it was fascinating.
Yeah.
So that sequence, they shot some other stuff
Yeah.
of like that guy attacking him, and there was a joke where he like chopped and missed, and he cut a lamb in half on the
What?
butcher's
Oh my
not a live lamb,
Oh.
but just a rack of lamb in
Yeah.
half at the butcher stand behind him,
Yeah.
and the butcher was like, "Oh, thank you." Like it did a little bit of his work. It's like, why did you cut that? That was so priceless.
That's awesome. And if there's anybody that doesn't know, Daryl, why was that scene filmed that way?
Because Harrison Ford was sick and
That's
he
right.
didn't feel like shooting the real scene. So he's like, can I just shoot this dude?
Now everyone was sick, right? Except for Spielberg.
Oh, yeah.
bunch of them
So
were
I was
sick.
They
listening
got
to
food
that.
poisoning.
They were he ate out of canned food from
Yeah.
the UK the entire time they were shooting this country.
Spaghetti
No
And
I
a
read.
ton of people
That's
got
why he didn't get
dysentery.
sick.
Oh.
Yeah.
So he
He's
made
like,
the
I'm
wise
no
choice.
fool. Hand me the spaghettios.
Yeah, that's right. I use that trick nowadays when I travel to certain countries. I take Cliff Bars. I'll take a
wow.
lot of Cliff Bars. This is
Nice.
Super interesting scene too, because, well, first of all, just like every other car in the 80s,
Yeah,
it
why
has
does
to
it blow up?
It has to blow up.
It
But
very
that
gently
shot,
fell on its side.
That's the explosion into a close up of his face. Like,
Yeah.
how do you do that?
Yeah, how do you do that? Yeah, absolutely.
And there was a shot in this sequence that was the last shot of the whole shoot.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no way. That's awesome. And then here's Indy commiserating with some whiskey and
With the traitor.
the racist monkey.
Why do they have that
Oh,
monkey? Do they ever explain why?
I think because they just want to showcase that there are still people trying to spy on them and keep somebody close to him
Like-
that's not a person. I don't know.
But why did Sala have it in the first place?
Oh yeah. Good question.
Yeah. But then like this monkey is like wildly intelligent because he like understands what his master's telling him to do here.
Yeah.
Like, no, stay there.
Yeah.
The truck exploding. Have you guys seen the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular show in Florida?
I have.
It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
It's really cool. So just going back to the parks, I mean, I
Yeah.
think I've enjoyed stepping into Indiana Jones more than I've enjoyed stepping into any other world.
Yeah. Totally.
But did you cry?
Did you cry? So we have this scene now where we're going to sit down, and so now we know that Belloc is still involved. He's still looking for it. We might have found that out in the Sala scene, but now they're confronting each other, and we're going to get a little bit of the worldview conversation here. Already, Belloc's acting like a total idiot because he's telling him we're going to have to be more civilized by not fighting and sitting down and conversing.
This is why I find him fascinating as a villain, because he's not, like you were saying, he's not too far off from Indiana Jones.
Right.
So it makes him confusing. He's not someone you can easily hate.
Yeah.
You want to,
Right.
but if you really ask yourself why, it's only because of that small difference or those small
Yeah.
differences.
Yep.
So
And
I
then-
think he's great as a villain.
Yeah. And then they're inverting the white hat, black hat thing
Right.
from just classic Westerns.
That's right.
What nationality is Belloc supposed to be?
French.
Okay.
Or at least he's supposed to have a French accent.
Right.
So
Okay.
And then there's this little, like you said, Justin, there's this little tiny difference between the two of them. And he says, I'm a shadowy reflection of you. Kind of like, at least I admit that I'm a grave robber. You keep playing it like you're not.
Mhm.
yeah.
He's talking about how they'll kill for it. And then we realize that Belloc is working for the Nazis. And Indiana Jones definitely hates him some Nazis.
Because you should.
Because, yes,
We've talked about that before.
we should. You should not be on that team. That's a great line. You want to talk to God? Let's go see him together. And everyone in this room has a gun. But fortunately, Sala has a lot of kids. And he sends them to get Indiana
That he's
Jones.
willing to send into
Yeah.
a place where all the men are guns.
That's right.
At least they're noble villains. They don't want to kill children.
Yeah, exactly.
Just so weird. You know,
It is weird.
considering Adolf's your boss, right?
Exactly. And Sala's waiting outside. I thought we'd find you there. Send
Yeah.
the kids in for you. And then this is gonna kick off the next section of the film here, where it's a race to get to the Well of Souls first. But they've got to figure out how to find the Well of Souls, and they don't know yet why the Germans haven't found it. So again, they take the tension. This is what I find so fascinating about this film. They're taking tension, the fact that no one's found the Well of Souls, and they've perfectly foreshadowed all of the reasons why they haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
because you mentioned it earlier, they're only using the one side because they're going off the dude's palm. So it's just fascinating because he has to turn it over to understand why they've got it wrong and why the length of the stick is incorrect, and why it's shining on the wrong part of the map. So
I have a question.
yes.
So a friend of mine, well, Brian, you know Brian.
Yeah.
He loves Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah.
And
We are in agreement on that.
he
He actually knows how to use a whip, which is crazy.
Does.
Yeah.
He's like won medals and stuff.
He's won medals?
Yeah.
Oh,
like
dude.
he does like yeah, he's really good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Go check his Instagram.
well, we've heard the argument that Indiana Jones isn't needed in these films, that he doesn't move the story forward. And I was teasing him that I'm gonna say he doesn't do that, and he's like, "Don't you dare!" I'm, like, I'm gonna do it, but only in the context of asking the question, like especially because you love this movie.
Yeah.
Explain to the viewers and the listeners why Indiana Jones does move the story forward.
Well, I'm not
justify yourself.
Yeah. Come on, story geek. I'm not entirely sure that he does, but I'm not entirely sure that a character must do that either. It's interesting because there's something that we are all very fond of characters that develop a lot, but a lot of times in serial stories, which is what Indiana Jones is based off of. Indiana Jones is based off of the old school serialized stories from back in probably the 1910s to the 1940s. And it's kind of an amalgamation of a lot of those things that George Lucas loved of those things. And in serial stories, it is very difficult for a character to develop over and over and over and go through multiple arcs. So instead, you have characters that just go through these really minor little changes. There's something about them that just slightly changes by the end of the film or the end of the book or whatever it is, because by the next book he's got to change a little bit more.
Right.
So I think sometimes when we see, like, whether it's a mystery story, this is very common in mysteries where the same protagonist is used, Sherlock Holmes, over and over and over again. He's not developing much at all, right? Do those characters have more agency than Indiana Jones has here? Yeah, maybe there's a little bit more agency. But I think that if you're going to have a character, Indiana Jones is reacting to what's going on like we are hoping we would react in the same situation. And so he doesn't almost need to. Oh, the set design. Is that what you're going to talk about?
Oh, it's just huge.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's just, those aren't CGI camels and people in the background.
Yeah.
They had that many people.
It's crazy, right? Yeah, it's awesome.
But
So
I've always liked that aspect of Indiana Jones, the fact that he doesn't really move anything forward, because it's kind of like he's the voice of reason in these ridiculous situations, and it's always like he's a little bit ahead of everybody else. Like, you all do your craziness, have your war, do your thing. I'm just going to figure this all out while you're doing that and then come out ahead of you. And I always really enjoyed that about him. I think it makes him look smarter.
Go ahead.
And just along with these kinds of things, moving the story forward, one of the things that impresses me so much about the action sequences, other than the action set pieces and the sets and everything else we've talked about, is just that the action is very character driven and story driven. Because I haven't watched the last couple of Transformers, but I feel like it's just like they're robots fighting because the robots are gonna fight, and that's like the logic. But in this, there's always a motivation. There's, you have to chase after the MacGuffin, you have to chase after the girl, you have to stay on top of this at any cost. And so I'm just fascinated by how they made the action matter.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, so you bring it up, Sandra, at probably the perfect point to say that he does move it forward, because there's no indication that they would ever find the Well of Souls if it wasn't for Indiana Jones figuring this part of it out. And there's no indication that anyone else would have figured it out, right? Like, he had to be a smart enough archaeologist to know not only how it was supposed to show up, but how they got it wrong too. But I do think it's a fair argument to say that if you remove him from the film, it doesn't change a whole lot of what happens. And we'll see that more and more as this goes on. But at the same time, I think that we're along for the ride with Indiana Jones, and it's just a fun ride regardless. So I don't think it doesn't need to be we can react to these things, and these things can prompt us to have like more interesting discussions, more a broader perspective of what the world and the universe around us could be like. Is our new supernatural things real? Like he's reacting to that the whole time, like we are reacting to that the whole time. And so I don't know if he needs to have as much of an emphasis on the plot, because he is us and he is who we want to be. So I personally find that more interesting.
Well, let's see what Brian thinks about that.
Yeah, he can go on YouTube and be like,
Yeah.
first of all, just troll us all day. It's totally fine. Yeah, the character development and the agency thing is pretty interesting. Like obviously Sherlock Holmes solves a lot of the mysteries, but if you look at a lot of the mysteries that are serial stories, you're just like, yeah, this character is pretty much the same character every single book or every single show or whatever. And we don't watch that kind of content for the character development. Just like I don't think we're watching Indiana Jones to make sure that he is a pivotal character. He just is iconic in the fact that he shows up in these scenarios and reacts to them.
Yeah. Indiana Jones as a character almost feels like the audience's wish fulfillment. It's just like, it's just so much fun. Like, I wish I was that cool.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones is a Mary Sue. React to that. Look at this, the theme. So they're in the Well of Souls. He's using the staff of Ra, and the theme at this point is so epic.
Yes.
You're like, what is going to happen here? I used to
coolest laser pointer ever.
Yeah.
That's right. The sun and a gem. I didn't own the soundtrack to Raiders, but I did own the soundtrack to Last Crusade.
Yeah.
And I owned it on cassette. I wore that cassette out, dude. I can even identify in the ride we talked about earlier, the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland. We were talking about that earlier, and I even can tell you, like, oh, this part of the soundtrack is paying homage to this part of this movie. Like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So now we got the new location. And this is so fascinating to me too, because as you talk about the soundtrack, this scene is very good to begin with. But the fact that the music is played on top of it, it's even more remarkable because of that. It's even more epic because of it. So was it you, Justin, that said it's Spielberg and it's Lucas and it's Ford and it's Williams? I mean, it's like ridiculous.
And I mean, that I don't mention Lawrence Kasdan in that list is just because of the other people in the list. It's just like,
exactly.
What in the world is happening?
Well, and Lawrence Kasdan, did Lawrence Kasdan also help with Empire Strikes Back? Am I right about that?
I think so.
I believe so. So that two of my favorite films Lawrence Kasdan wrote.
I almost feel like Lawrence Kasdan even directed Empire or something like that.
No, he didn't direct Empire because that was I can't think of the guy's name now. Marquand? No. That's the guy that does the impressions.
Yeah.
Something like that. So from here on out, basically Marion becomes sort of a damsel in distress. And she doesn't have much agency anymore.
From here on out, you're saying?
Well, from Cairo
a while ago.
From Cairo, from Cairo on out. As soon as they leave Nepal.
Yeah. I like how earlier they were like, Marion's dead. He's like, I know.
Yeah.
You know, and then he sees her now and he just gives her this huge kiss. I'm like, wait a minute. You were literally like, yeah, I know.
Yeah. They play the romantic theme as he's walking away from her. And they're still trying to figure out where this thing is. Which this is an interesting shot. This is a shot that you see appear in Star Wars several times too, where someone's looking through a telescope.
Yeah.
It is weird when the directors will do something like that though, because it is sort of a an odd shot. We don't see Indy's perspective any other time, like from his eyes, right? We don't
Right.
really see that at any other point in this film, but
Yeah.
when he looks through this thing, we got to see what he's seeing.
And then there was the moment before the guy poisoned the dates.
Yeah.
We were from his perspective, but in the same shot, he's watching the kid or whatever, and then from the same shot, he steps out. So like goes from his perspective
Yeah.
to like us in the closet for some
Yeah.
reason. Like,
Yeah. What's going on here?
He left his eyes back there. That's
Oh,
It is interesting.
he left one of them. He has
Yeah.
the patch.
Yeah, that's right. It is interesting to like directorial choices in that regard, because when so that's a great scene, because now we know how they got it wrong, right? Because they're revealing it on his palm by him saying "Hail Hitler," and what's also great about that is that we continue to have zero sympathy for that dude, because we learn that he was burned and that he's saying "Hail Hitler" at the same time.
He's the creepiest dude ever.
Exactly, and you're like, this guy's a dirtbag. I hope his whole hand falls off.
Or his face melts or something.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be
Exactly.
nice?
So, but this
But no, this
movie,
film's rated PG.
this movie, I think set me up for a deep desire
Uh-huh.
for bad guys to die horrible deaths. It's like I think this movie like
Yeah.
set me up for like understanding that evil dudes die terribly. So, and just
Yeah.
like even like I think this was the first movie that I used the term like big boss and stuff like that, because he fights a couple different people, like the
Yes.
guy by the airplane.
Yes.
And we know that that's like the muscle, but not, ultimately the big boss and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's just, bad
There's-
guys get their comeuppance in this movie, man.
I think there's at least in 2 of the 3 films, there's these big fist fights where Indiana Jones has no freaking chance. So we'll see one of those in a minute. But the other one I can think of is, well, I guess he does actually. Never mind. I'm thinking of a video game. I was thinking of Last Crusade, but he doesn't really have a fight in Last Crusade that he loses. He does punch a dude out of the Zeppelin, but we just go from iconic scene to iconic scene.
right.
Seriously.
And now the storm is coming because they're going to open up and find the Ark in a minute here.
And we didn't really point out that when they solved how tall the staff should be, there was like a somewhat supernatural thing happening where like the wind was blowing through the
Yes.
house. Like
Mhm.
there are a number of moments where it's like something else is happening. There's
Yeah,
another reality at
Just
play.
gets a little bit eerie.
Yeah. And that's another reason why I think I'm okay saying that Indiana Jones doesn't matter as much,
Mhm.
because we know that there's a greater power at work that is working through all of this scenario.
Are you saying
that-
let go and let God?
I'm just saying he has that
Jesus take
as
the
a bumper
wheel?
sticker.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to your point, Indiana Jones loses, and it's
Yeah.
the will of God and
Yes.
the will of the Ark, or however you would say that,
Correct.
that makes it okay in the end.
Right. Exactly. And that is sort of true in all the different series. He's doing things, but it's almost like there's something bigger happening, and he's just part of the reveal that exists.
Yeah.
So I read that they went all around trying to find snakes, as many snakes as they could, and even like legless lizards and stuff, but it still wasn't enough. So they had like cut off hoses or something.
Oh yeah.
All thrown in there.
Dude, I've been
And
afraid
that-
of snakes my whole life, and I'm not sure if it's because of this movie.
Mhm.
I mean, I almost got bit by a rattlesnake when I was
Oh, well,
5, so
that'll
I'm
do
sure that
it.
has something to do with it. But oh,
Well, apparently Harrison Ford is not scared of snakes.
No.
I don't think Harrison Ford is scared of
I
anything.
know.
Yeah.
The press,
Except
maybe.
for doing another Star Wars film.
Great line. I think this is the sequence where I start to see her as not as much of a damsel in distress, like that she kind of has a plan with the semi-seducing him and stealing the knife and all that stuff. But then she turns right back into a damsel in distress.
Yeah.
And runs right back to him when the other guy walks in.
I will say that this is sort of foreshadowed well, because now she pretends like she's going to drink, like that she's
Yeah.
going to be drunk, but
Yeah.
we know that she can drink like
Mhm.
no other. So that's kind of a cool thing. It's also, it feels to me, so here's one thing that I would say is interesting in the difference between Belloc and Indy, is that this scene where Belloc like starts to fall in love with her, this is a good place where you draw a conclusion that Belloc is still staying the guy who's interested in things, and Indy is the one who's growing in his understanding of being interested in people, because we get the impression that Belloc only wants her because she's the only female around, and he's treating her objectively. Right, like here, put on this pretty dress, right? Like,
right,
he's not.
Tell me about yourself.
Right, exactly. So he sees her as another artifact to be conquered, if you will, as opposed to how Indy is growing to see her.
And then this moment is pretty objectifying.
Yeah, exactly. They have a lot of that stuff in the 80s, dude. Like, I was watching Dick Tracy was in 1990. I'm like, there's a lot of that in Dick Tracy. My wife and I just rewatched Clue, the movie Clue. And you're just like, whoa, they were over the top with objectification, man.
Oh, right.
There was not even a second thought of it.
That is a pretty dress, though. I'm just kidding.
But then she like puts her clothes over the knife to steal it.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Indiana Jones lowers himself into the pit of snakes.
We see him dangling like that in the ride.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's such a good scene in that ride.
Mm-hmm.
How they made that work, it's insane. If you haven't been to Disneyland in a long time, go there and ride Indiana Jones.
And I feel
and that
like
attraction's like 20 years old.
I know.
Right, it
but
is.
it's so
95.
good.
It's so good.
Was it 95?
Something like that.
Yeah, 95,
And-
96, yeah.
And I feel like Indiana Jones looks better than Jack Sparrow.
Mm.
And he's younger.
Yes.
But I think they did a lot of the shadowing, like in this movie in the ride. So
Well, okay, so I was going to mention that earlier. And by the way, we're seeing the scene now where the King Cobra, if that's what that is like facing off against Indy, and there's a pane of glass there that you can actually see the reflection of one of the two of them, either Indy or the snake. I don't remember. If you really, really slow it down, you can see the reflection. So he's not really in front of a King Cobra. There is something in between. And then this is super sad how he starts just like gassing all the snakes and setting them on
That's not sad
fire.
at all.
Do it.
100%
this will teach
rational.
you to be a snake.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg was saying that the snakes were actually attracted to the torches because they're warm-blooded,
Oh,
right? Or
yeah.
cold-blooded.
Cold-blooded, yeah.
So they want to be warm.
Yeah.
And so he's like, that's not what it says in the script. You're supposed to be afraid of the fire.
So he coached them for 5 minutes and they
Exactly.
were much better.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if anyone can get those snakes in place, I mean, it's Steven Spielberg.
Right. So here we go. Here's the drinking scene. We've already foreshadowed that she can hold her own. And Belloc is French, so we assume he can't. That's the American spirit in us.
I always thought that Marion looked a lot like Lois Lane from the Superman movies.
Oh yeah, that is a good correlation there.
And they both kind of have crazy eyes.
What do you mean
Big,
by that?
beautiful
I don't know. They
eyes.
both just look like they could just slice you at any moment. I don't know. They
You look dangerous.
Who
they
hurt
look
you,
like
Daryl?
they look like there's a plan going on back there. You know, like
they're planning something. They're planning your demise.
yeah.
Meanwhile, this is really fascinating to me because we've got this. We are getting the impression that the Egyptian Empire eventually stole the Ark, and so we're in an Egyptian tomb with these giant. What is that? Anubis statues in the background.
I think so.
Yeah, and yet you've got this sarcophagus that inside would have been the Israelite item of power. And what's interesting about it is the idea that, like you mentioned this earlier, Justin, coming from the biblical perspective of saying if another culture was able to get the Ark, that they would be cursed. And we see the fallen empire of the Egyptians in this item of power that exists in their tombs,
Right.
that have all been covered up by the sand.
And it's never really questioned, like, why was this buried?
Yeah.
Did the Egyptians bury it with the, pharaoh that acquired it and it's just some of his treasure,
Right.
or did they bury it because this thing is messing us up? We need to like put it in a box and get away from it, or
Yeah.
what?
Totally. Now, have you guys heard the theory that the real Ark of the Covenant is actually in Ethiopia, in modern day Ethiopia?
Mm-mm.
So there's a modern day theory. You can go watch the History Channel. You'll see this. You'll see some examples of this. That the Ark of the Covenant actually exists and is being maintained by a group of priests in Ethiopia, but only a few people have said that they've been able to see it, and so the authenticity of their claim is in question.
I wonder why.
Last I saw, it was in Doc Ondar's Den of Antiquities.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, if you go to Galaxy's Edge, which again we did as a team,
Yep.
this was really fun. You can go into Doc Ondar's, and you probably have to ask somebody to show it to you because it is fairly obscure where it
Yeah.
is. Oh, here we go.
This is another great visual gag.
Yeah, you know what this is? This is the iron press.
Yeah.
Was it Last Jedi?
Yep.
Last
Totally
Jedi.
is.
You're like, what ship is this? Oh, they're pressing his suit.
Yeah. Oh, weird. He uses nunchucks. Nope. It's a hanger.
It's a hanger. Yeah, exactly. This guy's the worst, man. Those stupid round glasses. If you have those round glasses, I apologize, but he looks terrible in them. I'm sure you look great. And here's the big reveal. It's interesting that they carry it correctly. So they use the wooden poles because that's part of the legacy of it, the legend of it, if you will. It's part of what's in the Bible. There's also, we didn't mention it, but there's also in this tomb near the Ark of the Covenant, there is a pillar that has C-3PO and R2-D2 as hieroglyphs.
Yeah. I read that it was also on the plane.
The
I think
plane.
it was, yeah.
It has like.
Oh yeah.
OBC.
Yeah. You're right. That's exactly what it is.
something. Yeah.
Actually, Club
C3.
Obi-Wan is in Temple of Doom, and it's the club. When they leave the club, it says Club Obi-Wan over the top of it. Yeah,
That's pretty blatant.
pretty blatant. But it's in so far in the background, you kind of can't tell.
But that pilot, Jock, in Florida, in Disney Springs, they made a whole bar for that guy, Jock Lindsay's Hangar Bar.
Oh, wow.
It's a pretty cool place.
It is a really cool place. Yeah.
Again, I love Disney parks for letting me
I
go
feel
into
like-
Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Maybe one day, if our patrons continue to support us and it keeps going up, we'll do like a whole Story Geeks trip to Florida and go to those parks.
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
Because I haven't been. So have
You haven't been?
What?
No, neither have I.
Oh, man.
We should do this.
Patreon.com/the Story Geeks. And now they're
I bet we could do an Indiegogo or something.
yeah, there you go. Pay for us to have fun.
It makes sense. Indie.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
And they are stuck now. Indiana Jones is stuck in the Well of Souls, I guess. No, they're in the Well of Souls before. So this is, I don't know what the temple, I don't know what this is called, but he's in the tomb.
It's full of snakes. Who cares what it's called? It's awful.
The snake pit.
Pit. Yep.
And then just this is great visual storytelling because they're cutting back and forth between, just them outside,
Yeah.
or whatever, and then them on a sound stage.
Yeah, that's true. That's great. I never thought of that. That's a really good point.
You son of a.
Then they're gonna throw Marion down in the pit as well, and they just toss her in, dude. Like there's no sympathy. She has to grab onto the jaw of Anubis or whatever that is.
Ugh, in the shoe.
And then she breaks her back on her way down, but then Indy
Right.
catches her. So
She's fine. She's fine. She's just angry.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh.
I would 100% climb on someone to stay away from snakes.
And he even says the
Yeah.
girl was mine, like
Yep.
as if she's a possession, right? And that's Belloc saying that. And this is also where you see the conflict between the Nazis and Belloc, because Belloc wants the Ark for very different reasons that the Nazis want it, right? The Nazis want it because they want an item of power to help them win World War II and take over the world. Whereas Belloc wants it because he kind of secretly thinks that God will choose him for finding the Ark and make him more powerful that way. Or that he could actually relate to God because of his intelligence, right? That God would respect that from him, which is also an interesting message.
Yeah.
You know, I never really put two and two together that she thought that was a snake. And that's
Oh
why she
yeah.
did that.
No, it's
I should have put that together some other time. So I have a question for you guys, because as they're trying to escape here, we have the main villains here are Belloc and the Nazis. What do you think about? We hear a lot in the modern day in 2019. And we've been hearing this for about 10 years, where people will call somebody else a Nazi. Right, the far right calls the far left Nazis, and the far left calls the far right Nazis, and it's just this giant Nazi flinging war. But this is more of a depiction of what they may. I mean, it's a caricature for sure, but it's more like what we would see in actual history books. So, what do you think about the depiction of the Nazis here?
just going back to your question. It cracks me up that everyone agrees that Nazis are bad guys, because that's never a compliment.
Right.
So it's just far right. Everybody agrees that Nazis are the bad guys.
Right.
So
Only
just,
like complete psychopaths think that Nazis are like good. Right. Like
only Nazis think Nazis are good. And
that's right. That's right.
I mean, I don't know if that's true,
Which
because
part?
you hear the part about everyone thinks that Nazis are bad, because there are people who don't necessarily want to go there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I mean, I believe that they're bad.
Yeah.
But I think some people just kind of want to not say that, and say that there are good people on both sides, for example. And that's where it becomes problematic. That,
yeah.
you know, if it's not true that everyone agrees that Nazis are bad, but everyone should agree that Nazis
Well, do you
are
think
bad.
so? So to Justin's point, do you think that there are people that think that Nazis who are not Nazis would not would? Do you think there are people that who would not self-identify as a Nazi who think that Nazis are okay?
I don't think they would say that they're a Nazi.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't have that mindset.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah, we're all hypothetically.
I know,
Like,
but
what is this person?
But I think that there are people who exhibit behavior that is extremely problematic, and they don't take the title of Nazi.
Yeah.
And other people will say, like, defend that and say,
yeah.
like, you know, that they're coming from, you know, protecting the country or
Right,
whatever.
right.
And that is problematic. And it doesn't have the title, but it's still.
You're saying that there are some people who might even say Nazis are bad, but they exhibit behaviors that are Nazi-like,
or exhibit behavior that maybe exhibits the core behind what Nazis believed.
Right.
It's interesting because the one thing I was saying, like I said this when in one of the stupid stories about, you know, whatever neo-Nazi movement was in the news. I turned to my wife and I'm like, the one belief you can't really hold in the United States is that fascism is okay. Like of all the beliefs that you could hold, the one you can't hold is that other people are not allowed to hold your belief. Like, because we're literally, the country is built on freedom. So you like the one belief you can't have is that people are not free, right? Like that's the one thing that you have to believe if you're in America is that people are free, and that trips me out. That's why I think that that when we see Nazis on screen, the American ideal is so against Nazism. I'm not saying that it hasn't reared its ugly head in our country. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's so anti-American because legit fascism is anti-freedom. Like it's legit the opposite.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't make sense to me either. It doesn't mean people aren't trying to call it something else and act like it's cool.
Yeah, I guess you have to give me an example because I'm not exactly sure what you mean. You sound like you have examples, and I'm
nationalists.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think too, like the word Nazi gets thrown around.
Yes.
As an editor professionally.
Yes.
You know, I don't like when people say, "Oh, grammar Nazi," because it's wait, like that is
It's
not at all what I'm about. So it also gets kind of tossed around as like, this has significance. So when people call someone that, they really, you know, should be mindful of what it means and the historical
100%.
significance of that word, and then also not call it something else if it's really has like kind of that same vibe to it.
I was just by the way, we're watching right now just as a catch up. We're literally watching this dirtbag Nazi beating up Indiana Jones. This dude's huge.
He looks like he would be a character in Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
He totally does. He totally does. But we were my wife and I were on a trip to Europe and we went through Germany, and one of the places we stopped was Nuremberg, and we went through the place where Hitler held his Nazi rallies. And talk about freaky, man. You drive past this place and you're like, this has some bad situations that have happened here. But I think like one of the things I think that we need to do in our storytelling as it comes back, like tying this back together to story, is that we depict Nazis in these stories as being really evil. The Nazi party from Germany in the 1930s and 40s legit killed millions and millions of people purely because they existed outside of a white Aryan race. And I mean, that's just evil. That's just evil. There's no way else to depict that. So even though they can show up as caricatures, like maybe they're showing up here in this film, it's important that we continue to get that message across in our stories.
Yeah, I think it is like you're saying, caricatures, because you don't get the sense of how evil Nazis are in this film. I think
they're usually just like dumb foot soldiers,
right?
Yeah,
and because they're Nazis, they can kill as many of them on screen as they want to, and we're never gonna bat an eye at it. You know, we're gonna be, that's Nazis, okay,
right,
that's fine, let them die. But then again, if there were a movie that truly dove into the mindset of a Nazi,
which
I don't want to watch that.
Spielberg did later.
Yeah, he did do that later. Yeah,
and I've never seen that film.
Oh,
and I don't want to see that film.
It's one that I would say you should see at least once. It is an incredible film that is important.
Right, I think it is important. I watched it with my daughter, and she's 14, and we cried together.
Yep.
But I think it is important to be aware of what happened not too long ago.
Yeah.
I think it was fairly recently that the last survivor passed away.
The Holocaust survivor.
Yeah. And that's fascinating that someone alive recently could tell you the firsthand accounts of their experience.
I would anticipate that hasn't even happened yet because my grandpa just passed away and he was a pilot in World War II. So I would anticipate there were still some children that survived the Holocaust that are still alive, and that's in their lifetime.
Yeah.
Where did your grandpa fly?
He flew over the hump. He was in the
China?
Pacific.
Dude,
theater.
Your grandpa probably knew my great uncle.
Crazy.
My great uncle was a navigator on that same route, which is ridiculous because navigator in a plane. So there you go.
That's wild.
Justin and I are almost related. And we all know Kevin Bacon. Yeah. So this is not. So the other thing that I think that is troubling right?
Mm.
When you watch a film like this and it makes a big caricature out of the Nazis, is it's almost like, oh, okay, well our society could never turn into that because we have all these checks and balances, right? But if you look into the history of Germany leading up to their I don't want to say election of Hitler because I'm not sure that he was elected. But if you look at what led to Hitler, it is scary because it's not like you would it's not like there was some big jump that happened. There were little tiny things that happened over time.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe is something that you're referring to, Sandra, of like, well, we might not have Nazis right now, but look at where the tide is the tide headed in a way that could lead us down that line of thinking. And that's something we should all be very vigilant about and parsing that data because it doesn't evil exists in all of us. And to think that we would never be evil is a really bad call on our part because it means that we stop being vigilant to try and not be evil.
Right. And that's a key point about us stopping being vigilant because that's really what allows it to thrive.
Right.
Is other people's apathy.
Yeah.
To evil that now it's going to thrive.
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating because here we are watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I think this is where our minds naturally go when we watch films, is that we start to think about the deep significance and how it applies to our life and the stories that are unfolding in the world. And I think that's kind of how we all watch films, right? Like
to a certain degree. Sometimes I just escape to them, but yeah, I like doing this.
I don't necessarily watch a Fast and Furious film that way, but
yeah.
I've never seen one of those movies.
Really?
There's some poignant things in there, like some. What does he say? It doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
You think that's poignant?
That is true, bro. Dom wisdom. Dominique.
Do you live your life a quarter mile at a time?
If you ain't first, you're last. Is that another one?
Exactly. If you ain't first, you're last. This is another iconic scene where Indy is chasing the Nazis to get back to the Ark, and he's basically fighting his way through different vehicles. And this is all practical, man.
Yeah.
They got stunt people driving these things. Some people in the back seat getting tossed around. Wilhelm scream.
Yes.
Wilhelm scream.
Whoa, wait, who was that?
I don't know. What was it?
That actor with the scar.
Was it someone famous?
Looked like I'm gonna mess up his name.
And then they both laugh at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we agree for 1 second this is funny before you kill me? The soundtrack again.
Yeah, so good.
It's just amazing. I don't think. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say they were saying that it was 130 degrees when they were filming on the desert.
Oh.
130.
Can you imagine?
No.
That sounds awful.
So was that Dolph Lundgren?
Dolph Lundgren was in there?
Was that him?
Oh,
it
no
totally
way.
could have been if his
him.
name is in that.
Yeah, I guess back then.
Been a young Dolph. He was just in Aquaman, and I did not recognize him for the longest time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was like, "Who is that guy? I know that guy." I could not, because he has this like he's underwater, and so he has this like flowing hair.
Does he have a beard too?
He does have a beard too.
Yeah, and I don't think I've ever seen him with a beard.
Yeah.
So I
remember
didn't
looking at
identify
that.
him until just now. You saying that?
Yeah. I've got Gatsby under the table.
When I was watching it, I was like, "Who is this guy?" And since
Yeah.
I watched it at
Yeah.
home, I looked it up, and I'm like, "Oh wow, he looks so different." But I think that was him. It looked like him.
By the way, so the technique they're using right there, did you get that far on the special?
I would assume that's like a matte painting.
It is a matte painting. So they use it a lot in Star Wars too. They do a giant painting, and then they put that in front of the camera, and then the scene that they want to move, they just put that in like kind of the different area. So another classic matte painting scene is when the shuttle is pulling into the hangar bay. I believe it's in Return of the Jedi, but there could be one in Empire Strikes Back too. Those are just paintings, or the lineup of stormtroopers. There are some of those that are actual dudes, and then there's a bunch of them that are actual matte painting of dudes because they didn't have that many extras. So things that are cool like that. I used to be a really big fan of like the behind the scenes books. This is before they had DVDs,
Yeah.
so I used to get the books, you know, and I have an Indiana Jones one somewhere. I hope, unless I got rid of it. One thing that's really cool about Harrison Ford in this role too is that despite all of the ridiculousness that's happening around him, he fully commits to the emotions that he feels like he should be experiencing in the moment. Like he never, when he laughs at the guy, right? When they laugh at the guy, like he's still trying to figure this out. It's still, even though there's moments for us that are really funny, he stays serious or he stays in character. Whereas you think about like Tom Selleck, you're like, dude, there's no way Tom Selleck he's going to give us like a little wink at the camera or something like, yeah, I'm in on this joke, guys, you know? This is crazy. This is a crazy stunt right here.
And he did a lot of the stunts, right?
Did he? I don't know. Probably.
He's definitely hanging off that car. I mean, he's must be strapped in somehow, but he's still doing it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's like him in all of it though.
Right. No.
Because like this, they
No,
dug
he
a
wouldn't have done that.
trench, and
Yeah,
you can
where he-
actually see the trench in one of the side shots, like right
Oh,
there.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's lower.
The stunt man, this is what we're seeing on screen, just to make sure you're in the right place, is that he is crawling underneath the car. And now he's hanging off the back of the car with
Yeah.
his whip.
But
Is that his
there's
whip?
one shot of Harrison that like doing that. So.
Yeah. In Dick Tracy, it was making Jessica and I laugh because there actually is a lot of matte paintings in Dick Tracy, but they're meant to look a little bit comic, so they're not meant to look real. But also, they would speed up some of the fight scenes. It's like obviously these dudes were fighting real slow, and you had to speed it up.
I just love the symmetry of this fight. You threw me out there. I'm gonna.
Yeah, Except
Your
you're-
turn.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do the same thing you did. But
Like,
nope.
This is like Fury Road.
I love how it shows the guy get run over. His arms and legs pop
I
up.
haven't seen that shot in a long time.
Oh man.
Pull over and let him pass. Obviously, that's the thing to do.
And still that soundtrack,
Yeah.
man. Like you just hear it all
And
the way
I've
through.
still been shot.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
which
that's right.
scene do you guys like better? Do you like this scene or the tank scene from Last Crusade?
Oh,
Because I love the tank scene.
I love
from
the
Last
tank scene
Crusade.
too.
where his satchel gets hung up on the,
Yes,
the metal
yeah.
that's
bar.
horrifying.
That's
He
horrifying.
rides the tread.
Yeah.
And he puts the rock in the cannon and it blows it up.
Oh yeah.
I love that gag. Man, there's just how did he plan that? Like, how does one plan with those villagers? Okay, guys,
Yeah.
if all goes according to plan, I'm gonna come in here with a truck.
That's right. I'm gonna park here. You guys cover it up. And then you hand them watermelons.
No.
Yeah.
And he's gonna throw it. Don't worry about it. I'll pay for it later.
That's right. I owe you a watermelon, bro.
Was that even a watermelon?
I don't know what it was. It looked like a watermelon. It could have been something else. And now they're gonna get smuggled out by this dude, Mr. Katenga, who's pretty badass, dude. Guy's smoking. Is it? It's not a cigar. I guess it's a cigarette. He's got his captain's hat on, and he's got like a cardigan. Not
I
a
just
cardigan,
love how
just a-
it's lit though, the whole scene.
Oh, it's amazing.
So that's your definition of badass? Captain's hat, smoking, and a turtleneck.
How many dudes can pull that off though? And you're still like, this guy's badass. Most people, you'd see them wearing that, and you'd be like, this guy's an idiot.
I think the smuggling people has something to do with it.
Yeah,
not so
probably
much
so.
the turtleneck.
Can you imagine though? You dress me up in a captain's hat and a turtleneck, smoking. You'd be like, this guy.
Let's do it.
This guy's a loser.
The screen test was simply who could own the costume. Like, that guy.
That's right. This guy's in.
Whoa.
This is an awkward scene, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
She looks like she just changed his life with that kid.
Yeah.
I know.
He's like,
He starts
"Oh my
singing.
God.
And then he starts singing. Doesn't he say something about the monarch of the sea too? He kisses this dude. He's like, I'm gonna spread the love, brother. They all laugh about it. And then we're back to them out on the ocean. This is a pretty iconic scene too between the two of them. Where does it hurt? Here and here. And this is the scene where she hits him with the mirror. They'll say chalkboard, but he's at Oh, clocks him with the mirror.
The sound of that.
The sound. Oh yeah. Yeah, that is a pretty brutal sound. He's been super tough this whole time, and now he's reclining on a bed, and he can't stand the pain.
He didn't have time to think about it before. Now it's all
Adrenaline.
sinking
It's
in.
all adrenaline. Okay.
You'd think he'd take his hat off by now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He can't though. He's Indiana Jones. So she's gonna start kissing everywhere he says this. It doesn't hurt. There you go. She takes off his hat, and then he's gonna. This isn't too bad.
So many ways for this scene to go wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. In the romantic. See, again, it's not fair because I feel like you could do so many things in this scene that are not that romantic, but you put the John Williams soundtrack over it, and you're like, this is love. This is love at its finest. And then he falls asleep. And she feels like she's going to want to hit him with a mirror again, it seems like.
I have a feeling he's concussed from the mirror. That's why he felt
Yeah. And then we see we're coming up on the crate that contains the Ark of the Covenant. And we're getting some Stranger Things season 3.
Right.
Mice action.
Rats.
But yeah, then there's the we see the swastika, and the swastika gets burned out, almost as if to say that the Ark means business, and this doesn't stand for. I mean, you have to think about it this way too. Like the Ark represents the people of Israel, Jewish people, which is what the Nazi Party was trying to eradicate. So there's a lot deeper symbolism there than they're diving into.
Yeah.
And then here it shows up the German U-boat. Actually, I guess it's not a U-boat; it's submarine.
That is the submarine from the movie Das Boot.
Is it really?
Before they
one?
made the movie, yeah.
Oh, really?
The actual
No
one.
way.
They didn't want to make another movie, just budgeting, or they didn't want to make another submarine for this movie for the budget and everything. So they rented that one before they shot Das Boot.
And then here's Marion getting this probably is, I think, one of the most frustrating parts of the film, that she gets captured again. It's like they can't do
Like she's
anything.
Jack Sparrow or something.
The similarities between Marion and Jack Sparrow is that the next. That's
Well,
the next.
Drinks a lot.
Gets
Maybe.
kidnapped
Super
every
good
5
at
minutes.
drinking. Yeah, has a bad attitude about the world.
Crazy eyes.
By the way, they pull the Ark up out and it's in the crate, and nobody stops to be like, "Dude, who the hell burned off the whole side of this thing?" Everybody laughs because she almost hits him. I love this line.
Yeah.
That's so good. I killed him. Meanwhile, Belloc looks very anxious. By the way, it's completely ridiculous what they're going to cut to in a minute here, because there's no chance it could ever happen. Because these ships, I do not think, are still in the ocean. Here's Belloc trying to take possession again. Oh, but he's a gentleman. He gives her his jacket.
I was just thinking, like, it looks really cold.
Yeah.
He's just playing. Whee!
Yeah.
Learn about that bar.
Cut to the submarine. Yeah. Just mapping it. By the way, I thought that dude they show for 2 seconds, the captain of the submarine, was Harrison Ford for the longest time. I'm like, he looks just like him. And here comes the soundtrack again.
I like that shot where it's just like, okay, you lean forward a little bit. Okay, cool. We got everyone.
Yeah. And it's so thrilling when he's like, I found him. And he's like, where? He's like, there. And then it's just this moment where you don't see him. And then heroic theme.
And cheering from the boat.
Yeah. And
the captain salutes him.
And no Nazis are paying attention. Like, why are those dudes all excited? What are they cheering about?
And it's not just a heroic theme; it's a happy theme.
It is.
It really makes you feel, oh, everything's okay. They're playing the song.
It's triumphant.
Yeah.
Right. And then here's the dark shaded map when the Nazis are rolling around.
So there's a cut scene where Indiana Jones, like the periscope goes up for them to look or whatever, and the ship goes down. And Indiana Jones is just holding onto the periscope above water. It is so goofy looking. There were a number of things that I'm like, man, I'm glad they cut that.
Oh, yeah.
What is it, 1941? Did you ever see Spielberg's movie 1941?
I have never seen that.
There are some goofy things in that movie. So there's like a girl, it's like a cup between this and Jaws, where there's a girl out swimming, and then a periscope comes up. It's just weird.
Well, it's a comedy, right?
It is. It's a screwball comedy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
just didn't totally get
that. By the way, that soundtrack, also John Williams, fantastic soundtrack.
I don't remember that soundtrack.
Oh, it's so good. It's very 1940s Americana.
Oh, they don't like it.
Yeah, it's really cool. You made me think of something when you're talking about Goofy. Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Has a lot of that they kept in. Right? So the raft going over the falls, which they then had to bring up again in the movie that doesn't exist, that's in my mind, that I wish was not a thing. No, but they bring it up again in Crystal Skull. And I'm like, why are they doing that? By the way, my wife and I were in Germany over the summer, and I realized that all of my German comes from Indiana Jones.
Isn't it really poor German though?
No, it's terrible. I had a friend who spoke fluent German when I was a kid, and he was younger than I was. But I'm like, what does this mean? And I would say it the way they say the thing. He'd be like, that's not a word, dude. Like, I don't know what that is. So pretty soon, coming up in a minute here, they're talking about what they're going to do with the Ark at the end of the scene, at the end of this movie. And there's one of my favorite lines in the film is coming up in a minute. He says the one true Ark is if there's other ones.
Yeah.
Well, but that's like how he's convincing him to open it, right? Because he's like, you don't want to disappoint the Fuhrer, so let's test it now.
Yeah. Here's where one of my favorite lines, because it's so ridiculous. So they're taking the Ark, they're transporting the Ark through this canyon, effectively,
So
They're-
what's gonna happen now?
they're-
Indiana Jones is gonna pick up a rocket launcher. Wait, what?
Yeah. Dude, get that dude a bazooka. That's one of my favorite things. It's so ridiculous. By the way, this guy obviously just shaved that part of his head. It's like-
You still see his roots.
yeah,
right
you still
there.
see the roots, like, dude.
He got horribly sunburned just from that shot.
Yeah. They didn't put a bald cap on or anything. Yeah. What are in these crates? Oh, a bazooka. And the theme is a very
It's very menacing.
yeah, very menacing. This is my favorite line right here. Jones. I love that line. I'm gonna blow up the ark. Of all the things that he could do, it's like so unlikely. I'm just gonna blow up the ark right now.
Because that's going to
Also-
solve everything.
Did we know that Belloc's first name was
Oh, there's
Renee?
the fly. There's
I
the
know,
fly.
I know.
Yeah, Marion says it earlier.
Okay.
Oh yeah, what
The
did
fly.
it crawl into his
Yeah.
mouth? Or
Yeah.
something? How does that guy not react to that?
Acting.
Yeah, committed.
Spielberg.
Committed. Yeah. Yeah, there's like a negotiation because he's standing there with the bazooka. This is an interesting scene to me because it kind of showcases that despite the fact that he cares more about people, he still cares. This is where I think so either two things are happening here. He hasn't actually grown as a character and doesn't care about people because he really does want to see what the arc is about, or it showcases that he actually has grown in his interpretation that this might actually be something real that has supernatural or paranormal power, and he's thinking, well, if this is what it is, then I can just let it play out. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
so it's an interesting one. Because this is I'm now digging really deep into this, but basically what the premise of the filmmakers are what they're saying is that for sure God would deem the Nazis evil like we should, and that if we let this play out, evil cannot win, so therefore God will defeat evil.
Mhm.
Right? Like it's
Yeah.
really fascinating. Here's another great set piece. And the fact that he would dress up like a high priest is just so...
Yeah, why does he do that? I mean, there's no explanation for that.
Well, the only thing I can think of is that in the Old Testament scriptures, if you were going to deal with the ark at all, you had to be ready to interact with it.
Yeah.
And you had to have the artifacts, you had to have the dress, you had to have the, what is it called? The laver that they have around there, that he has around his chest. Like that's a real, like they did a real job of coming up with that. Now these guys don't die right off the bat when they touch this thing.
And the thing he has on his chest, it has 12 stones for the 12 tribes
Exactly.
of Israel and everything.
Mm.
So this feels like the difference between knowledge and wisdom. So it's kind of like, okay, so you have like some knowledge
Right.
of like what historically had to happen, but you've got no character and you've got no wisdom to make this actually work out.
Yep. And now here we're discovering that the 10 Commandments, the stone tablets that held the 10 Commandments, have disintegrated into dust. And they're letting that dust run through their fingers.
And we're still on the same page that had nothing to do with Thanos, right?
There was a little scene there where we saw you saw Harrison Ford's face, and he has almost a moment of like, yep, it's all fake and you lost. And then we go immediately into, wait a second, it's not fake,
Yeah,
but they
something's happening.
still lost. Yeah, it's very fascinating.
He's like, uh-oh.
The lighting in the scene
It's
is
real.
fantastic. Yeah. Uh-oh, it's real. Yeah.
Yeah. The lighting, I think, is superb in,
Yeah, it's
in these films.
crazy.
It's just beautiful.
And talk about the idea of him not affecting the story. Like, this is the most climactic part of the movie, and he's tied to a post.
I
Like,
know.
he's not doing anything.
That's
With, like,
right.
2 lines. Yeah.
Yeah, he basically.
But
just
he's having
says,
a moment.
Close your eyes. Yeah. But see, he is. He's reacting
Yeah.
as we would react. Like, oh shit, it's all real.
Yep.
Now I don't know why he would say don't look at it.
Yeah.
This starts to get really fascinating, right? Because we saw earlier the biblical representation was the power of God was like rays of light. But now we're seeing like the souls of people or something. Like there's ghosts swirling around, right? Not to mention the fact that some of these ghosts, when they roll up on these dudes, are super creepy looking.
Yeah.
So you would say like, well, the power of God doesn't look like this. Looks more like what you would describe as demonic or something, right? Although Belloc says it's beautiful, so maybe, but it turns ugly real fast. Like that's like Lord of the Rings style.
Yeah. Well, it's again like Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
too.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
The librarian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Time to melt some faces.
Oh, here we go. And there goes the power of God, I guess, just slicing through people. Those are some fantastic practical. Well, I guess they're not really practical, but they're the special effects.
But elements of it were practical. Like when they were filming it, guys were just wearing light bulbs on their chest and on their back and stuff. But then this is all practical.
yeah,
Right.
face melting, and then that dude's head explodes.
And again, this movie's rated PG.
Yeah,
Yeah.
parental guidance suggested.
Strongly.
Now, why doesn't Indiana Jones? Why don't Indiana Jones and Marion die right there?
Because they're not looking at it.
There's
You think
something
that's it?
about knowledge.
I mean, I think that's what they want you to see.
Yeah. So it doesn't have anything to do with him being worthy. It just has him closing his eyes. That's all it is.
I always interpret it as it's somehow them not looking somehow exhibits a sense of humility
Mhm.
Yes.
and a lack of hubris,
yes.
And reverence,
and
maybe?
therefore they're spared. And reverence, yeah.
yeah.
and the penitent man kneels before God.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Neil.
I think that's a good take on it. Oh, and then they hug each other.
And another beautiful score. Right there.
Yeah. And this is again evidence that he doesn't get untied and run to the thing. He gets untied and then spends a moment with her.
Mhm.
It's more about we survived this than it is about the thing didn't kill us, right? Like,
Right.
And then cut to these idiots. And so here the government has taken the Ark. We don't know where the Ark is. And Indy and Denholm Elliott's character, Marcus Brody, are not happy about that.
So, do you guys take this move by the government as extreme wisdom or extreme like negligence with what they do with the Ark?
Yeah. What do you think?
Or maybe fear.
Because I think that it's kind of the answer to Marcus's like, it's extreme power. It has to be researched. And they're like, I've always taken this as like, you know, they don't know what they've got there and all that. And I've always taken this as the army knew, and they just boxed it up, sealed it away, and hid it.
I've always kind of just taken it as more so negligence and like idiocy, kind of like. But I think your point's actually a pretty good one because it's kind of the opposite of what the Nazis would do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's interesting. It's an interesting question. Top secret. They just moving into a warehouse full of other top secret stuff. And I'm really glad we've never revisited this warehouse.
Not a good idea.
There's a great shot of him swinging through these boxes, though.
That's another matte painting, right?
Yep,
I will
absolutely.
say though, when I saw Crystal Skull and saw that scene,
Yeah.
I'm like, this movie's awesome.
I was hopeful
It's after that things start to go downhill.
I totally agree.
that they sort of nuked the fridge after that.
Yeah, exactly. They jumped the fridge. Is that what we're saying?
Nuke the fridge.
Nuke the fridge. Jump the shark.
Yep.
Well, that's it. That is it for. By the way, Kathleen Kennedy is the associate to Mr. Spielberg in this. As you look at the credits,
Oh, crazy.
if you look at what Kathleen Kennedy has become, I mean,
Mhm.
she's basically taken over the Lucasfilm empire.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
And I think it is important to note that this is Lucasfilm. So when the Walt Disney Company acquired Lucasfilm, they acquired Star Wars, obviously, but also this franchise. So there's, talk of another movie and stuff, and I'm hopeful that'll happen.
I always hope that it'll turn out for the best, but you never know. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you're like, how far can they take it? Like how far can they have another film where Harrison Ford plays Indiana Jones? I mean, like the guy's approaching 80, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be ageist here. It's just that you don't see a lot of 80-year-olds, swinging on ropes.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if they can pull that off or not.
But that goes back to like Indiana Jones. Like he's the only Indiana Jones.
Yes.
I could watch someone else do these stories though.
Mm,
Like you tell me Chris Pratt
yeah,
is
his
in
name's been
a
around
Steven
it.
Spielberg
Yeah.
directed archaeological adventure movie. I'm like, I am in.
Right.
I am so there.
Yeah, but it
So-
doesn't have to be Indiana Jones.
But
Right.
I'd want it set in that universe. I'd want it to be an extension of the movies.
What do you think about Sahara?
I like that movie.
I did too.
I just rewatched it with my
Yeah.
brother because we were playing a board game and just wanted
Yeah.
something light on. And it
Yeah.
was a really fun movie.
It's fun, right? It's a really fun movie. I feel like I'm kind of with Daryl. Like I really liked the Mummy series
Mm.
before it got crazy.
The first National Treasure.
yeah, like those films, I think they hold something there that is more interesting than trying to bring us back to a character and it feels like more like a money grab. It feels like they don't
Mm.
need to go to that character. We don't like. I disagree. I don't agree with Star Wars. Indiana Jones is literally built off the title character.
Yeah.
Star Wars is built off the universe of Star Wars. I don't care if
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker is in the next one. I love Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. Don't get me wrong. If he's not in the next one, I'm still in.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
I have a hard time thinking that Indiana Jones could be anybody else, but I would love to see another 1930s serial type adventure hero.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned Uncharted. That's
Yeah.
perfect, right? Like go back and we talked about. I was talking with Brian actually. I was tweeting with him about bringing the Rocketeer back. It's the
Yes.
same feel, right?
Oh,
my
yeah.
gosh.
That 1930s, 40s
Yep.
Americana is really cool.
Mhm.
There's just something really. I think we view that era with a certain amount of innocence that there probably wasn't, but we view it that way. And I would love to see some other series, but I don't.
Yeah.
I just casting someone else as Indiana Jones to me, I just don't see how it works. I love Chris Pratt. He to me is more of a Tom Selleck in that role
Mm.
Yeah.
than Harrison Ford would be. So, and I just don't know who else you would pick. Like as I go down the list of names, I'm like, nope. So I don't know. Well, any last thoughts about Raiders of the Lost Ark before we close it out? We haven't done a podcast this long in a while. It's coming up on 2 hours. A lot of fun though to do a movie night like this.
Yeah.
Watch the movie together. Glad you guys.
What's our next one?
Oh man, the next goal. If we can get up to 200 a month, we got to do something else.
What if we just get to 100 again?
yeah. We need one more dollar.
Back to 100.
One more dollar out there. By the way, next time we create a list, we have to put an Edgar Wright movie on that list. Got to throw it out to
Yes.
I feel like at this
I'm
point
there.
we need an Edgar Wright series just to properly apologize to Sandra
Yeah,
for
it's
our
very, very true.
negligence.
It's very true. Either
I'll take it.
that was a high five or that was a let's crush Jay's head in between our kind of look like that on film. All right. Well, if you guys want to support us on Patreon, we would love it if you would do that. Patreon.com/TheStoryGeeks. You can also find links to it from TheStoryGeeks.com. Thanks again for making this suggestion. I could watch Raiders of the Lost Ark just about every day. Probably not, but I'd have to throw some other movies in there too. Sandra, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending your Monday night with us. Justin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for your show.
Daryl, thanks for joining us.
Yes.
keep in mind, if you're listening to this in the month of July, we have our X-Men series going on. So check those out. As of this recording, we tomorrow morning, we're launching our nerd fight over how to make Apocalypse better. We had Rod and Karen from the Black Guy Who Tips podcast, and they're hilarious. Yeah. So you have to be there for that one. And then next week, we're actually going to go back into the X-Men series and go back a movie into Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
So as the movies are time traveling, we're time traveling as well. And which one's coming first? Any last thoughts, guys? Anything else you want to say?
That was fun.
It doesn't apply as much to this movie as it does The Last Crusade, but Indiana was George Lucas's dog's name.
Oh,
yep.
Fun fact.
I didn't know that.
There you go.
Yeah.
And my brother-in-law has a dog named Indy for that very reason.
That's the way to do it, man. I named my dog Gatsby. He's on the floor right down here. And maybe I did it wrong, huh, Gats? Maybe named Indy. He's not interested in me at all. All right. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Question everything in your favorite geek stories.
And always seek the truth.
Yes.